Good afternoon and welcome to the second webinar of our fall series, Targeting Grantsmanship and Preparing for the NSF HSI Call. I'm Margie Bella, the Senior Program Manager with the NSF HSI National STEM Hub. Today's webinar is a Q&A session for the NSF HSI Solicitation. The next deadline for submission is in February, followed by another one in August. A bit of housekeeping before we get started. This webinar will last 1 hour. Today's webinar has 2 panelists, Antonio Garcia and Delia Valles. All content-related questions should be submitted in the Q&A box for the panelists. We ask that you help us manage questions by submitting your technical questions related to Zoom and other technical issues in the chat box. We have an incredible staff working this webinar today. Edmundo Medina is dedicated to monitoring technical questions during this webinar, and Nicolas Mendez is live tweeting. Our handle is @HSI STEM Hub, and we invite you to be a part of the discussion on Twitter. We will address questions at the end of the presentation. We may not have enough time to answer all questions, but we will address what we can in the time allotted, and we'll post answers to questions online at the hsistemhub.org. Webinars are being recorded, and all recordings will be posted to the website. All materials and recordings will be available to members of the HSI STEM Professionals Network. Please join the network for access to these materials and announcements for these postings. There's no membership fee, and you can join at www.hsistemhub.org/join. That will be in the chat for you to reference later. At the end of the presentation, you should also receive an email with a short survey monkey from Dr. Delia Valles. Please take a few minutes after the webinar to complete this short survey. I know some of you have already completed this before, and it's really important for us to assess your feedback for every webinar. We use this data for the NSF reporting about this project and to measure our program outcomes. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our panelists this afternoon. Dr. Antonio Garcia was recently appointed as Associate Dean of Academics for the College of Engineering at New Mexico State University. He brings more than 34 years of experience in academia and industry. He also holds the position of George W. Lucky Professor in Chemical Engineering due to his expertise in bioprocessing and biomedical devices. He is the PI of an NSF HSI Grant Award in April 2020 on innovative partnerships with industry with the theme of enhancing social mobility by combing adult learning within an engineering curriculum. Dr. Delia Valles is an associate professor in the Department of Industrial Engineering at New Mexico State University. She has been the PI of grants from NSF, USDA, SCERP, and General Motors. Her research uses nature to inspire the development of innovative manufacturing processes, new processes of biomass utilization, models and algorithms for system optimization in agriculture, education, and manufacturing. Her research and funded projects have impacted several students from STEM disciplines. We will start with Dr. Garcia, and after 20 minutes, we'll move to a Q&A session where both Dr. Garcia and Dr. Valles will answer questions. Dr. Garcia and Dr. Valles, welcome, and thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you very much. So let me share your presentation, Dr. Garcia, and then you tell me when to change the slide, and then let me mute my camera. 1 second.
All right, great. So thank you very much, and it's great to be here with you this afternoon. And so I'm hoping too that these slides will be shared with you all through some mechanism, hopefully as an attachment. So I'm just going to go over them in a way that I guess just gives you an emphasis on the different things that I think are really important about getting external funding, especially from the National Science Foundation. And just a little bit of background here is that these slides are actually from NSF. And just in general, if nothing else from this presentation, if I can leave nothing else with you in this presentation, is that the National Science Foundation people throughout the organization are extremely helpful. They provide lots of information about the call for proposals. They provide a lot of detailed information on their websites. It may take you a little while to get through it, but when you get it, you see exactly what they want you to do in terms of writing a proposal. They put together slides like this, and they give lots of presentations, and they have office hours, which you'll hear from Delia. She'll go over some of those details in another set of PowerPoints. So always go to them as a resource and find out all the things. And I'll share with you a couple of really key things for you to look at, which I think are helpful. So I'm just going to emphasize some of these slides rather than actually go through them in detail. So Delia, please, next one. So here's the main thing. All of us as researchers, professors, faculty, university staff, we are motivated, right, as our profession is to serve students, to do research, to improve our universities. And so we all have stories to tell. And when someone tells me, at least, you know, write a proposal, or if I say I want to write a proposal, the instinct is to focus on the story, focus on, hey, this is a great idea. Hey, you know, I really want to do this. And I think that's great. But in the first step, I would recommend people when you're writing a proposal is stay with that passion that you have for whatever it is. Serving students should be number one, especially with the HSI programs, and figuring out ways of doing research in order to do that better. But put that aside for a minute, because really, in my opinion, after all of these years, whenever you want to put together a proposal, really the budget is at the core. So I call it the budget is the proposal. So in other words, you're asking people for money. So put yourself in the role of the sponsor. If you had $1 million, where would you put it in terms of education in STEM, in terms of HSI education in STEM, in terms of retention rates, graduation rates, in terms of getting students exposure to understanding some new fields of STEM, giving them an opportunity to do certain things? Where would you put the money based on what you think is important, and then figure out how would you do that? You know, and so the three big things in proposal writing is that, you know, sometimes $1 million sounds like a lot of money until you start actually putting together the proposal and you realize that there are all of these really expensive things. The number one is the people. So definitely in a proposal it really starts with figuring out what is it that you need in terms of personnel. And that could be a lot of different things for a lot of different reasons. Certainly, I want to emphasize two things as well in this proposal presentation, is that you need evaluation to be very, very, very well done, because the NSF strives on making sure that it understands where the money went. Again, you know, in terms of a proposal being granted, you're spending money, federal money, the people's money. So they want to be able to account for that. Evaluations are the way to do this. Did the project work? How did it work? Why did it work? Where, you know, what are the outcomes and things like that? And so evaluation is definitely part of your budget, and research as well. So doing the people, it's really about the people who do evaluations, all of that part, and it's research. Who are all the people doing the research? Students, faculty time, as well as any other resources involved in that, which leads to the other two categories, which you probably focus more on, I think, in general, which is I need these materials, I need this equipment, I need this this ability, and you know, post-COVID, hopefully, to travel and have students do field work or whatever kinds of travels you need. And that is a general category, again, of resources. So resources can be lots of different things. And so I would think early on, even before you get to write the first paragraph, I would really strongly suggest you start with a budget first, and you start outlining all these things and have an idea as to how the proposal is going to work itself into there. Then you could start looking at, if I had all of this resource and if I had all this budget, what question would I be able to answer in a satisfactory way? Because that is, again, part of the reason that you're getting the funding, because people want to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what was the outcome, and how we're going to advance knowledge, which I'll talk about in a next slide or two. Please, next slide. So the other aspect of this, so this is on the writing side. The other aspect is we have to always remember as proposal writers to think of ourselves as proposal evaluators. So that's really who you're writing the proposal to, because they are the group of people, group of experts the National Science Foundation brings together, and specifically to read your proposal, to read the content in a thorough manner based on their own expertise, and then discuss it as a panel and make an assessment of everything that was heard in terms of a panel summary. So definitely we'll talk a little bit about the review process, but I want to make sure that if you have access to anybody who has been a reviewer, or if you have not been a reviewer yourself yet, please go find these folks and or request that you have a chance to be a reviewer. Once you have that orientation, you really improve your proposal writing. And then even if you haven't evaluated, if you've done it maybe 3 or 4 years ago, you should volunteer again, because you really gain a lot by learning to look at a proposal from a writer perspective early on from the reader perspective. So next slide, please. And I found a new link, which I'm really excited about. So that's in light blue there, and hopefully when you can download it, but if you can't download the presentation, or if you really are burning to learn what that link is, I highly recommend it. I think they ask you for your information at first, and then you can just click and get in. And that is basically easy URL to remember, tips4reviewers.nsf.gov. Because this is the training video that NSF is now using, or has been using maybe just recently, with their reviewers before their panels convene. And for us, writing a proposal, or even if we're starting to write a proposal or thinking about writing a proposal, or even in the middle of proposal writing, definitely want to see that over and over again, because it'll drive home this slide. This slide is very hard to digest at first, right? Intellectual merit, broader impacts, easy words to say, more or less, but explaining these things and explaining all of the work that reviewers have to do in order to interpret your proposal in the context of what they have to do, without interjecting unintentional biases, as well as unintentionally looking at your proposal from the perspective of something that is not related directly to what the program is trying to do. And so that's really important video. I would highly recommend it, because really, again, the reviewers are people, your colleagues. Some of them spend more time writing proposals, potentially, maybe have more experience. Some of them have less experience than you do as a proposal writer. They're trying to assimilate things, they're trying to learn, and they're trying to improve their ability to communicate in this complex matter. How do you rate a proposal on intellectual merit? What does intellectual merit mean for an HSI proposal? What does intellectual merit mean for looking at research into student learning in STEM? And what are the different contexts? So are there social contexts? Are there even brain science kind of contexts? Are there resource limitations? What is the body of knowledge and understanding that? And so on, so on. So there is lots of knowledge out there, and it's hard to get a panel, any one panel, to have all of that expertise, but they are trained in understanding what are your questions, what's your hypothesis, what do you say is the intellectual merit, and why do you think that intellectual merit is important in your field? When it comes to broader impacts, it's even harder to explain it. That's why they created a video, because there are many different ways of satisfying that aspect, which is what's the social impact of the research that you're proposing to the National Science Foundation. The social impact can be different things depending on the different kinds of projects. And certainly the part of the impact is going to be in understanding science at a different level than just writing an academic article. So beyond that, are there other ramifications? So again, I could spend a lot of time just talking about, and the National Science Foundation gives presentations on merit review criteria. But this video, you'll be interested in it, and it's worthwhile watching it more than once even. So that's what I would recommend to focus when you're getting to the point where you want to learn, how do I make sure that I cover everything that I need to in the proposal? So next slide, please. So advancing knowledge. So this is the key thing. in my instance, for example, I have lots of great ideas. I think, at least I think they're great ideas. Periodically, my colleagues have great ideas every day, working with Delia and people, really creative and fun and interesting and highly intelligent people. You always come over and find there's a few nuggets here. Now, the question is, if I took those ideas and I try to think, okay, what could I do with these ideas within my context, within my institution, or what I'm doing, or what I'm interested in doing? And how could I put that in there so I can create a program that's supported and would actually advance knowledge? So there are lots of steps from idea to actually getting this to the point of, okay, I see that there's a way of advancing knowledge in this area. And some of it involves doing literature review, of course. Some of it involves talking to people. My preference is always talk to as many people, work with as many people, work with people outside of your field, collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. I think that's the mantra that the NSF would also explain. You collaborate within your institution with other people and learn from people who've gotten grants. And so please, I don't want to forget to tell you that if you have any questions about my proposal, my project, it was funded, other people the same way. I'm happy to share narratives with anybody who just sends me an email so you can get a chance to see it. It's neither good nor bad. It's a funded proposal. There's merit to it. We're trying to advance knowledge currently. My other projects also, we have a body of knowledge that we felt we've advanced over the years. And you can see embedded in this benefit of society being potentially transformative. How do you do all those things? You need a plan. And so again, the plan will relate back to what you say in your budget and what you say in your proposal. So if you have a pilot project, your plan has to be scaled to getting to the point where you can now pilot something new. If you have a long-term grant, your plan should be able to go through all of the stages that you need to grow your initial idea into a fully forming, ongoing project, evaluate as you go along, make mid-course corrections as you go along, and be able to disseminate and advance knowledge as you go along. And then towards the end of the project, be able to disseminate all of the findings and be able to really push forward that broader impact area that I think is what we tend to do. So it depends again on the scale. So the plan will definitely be something you want to write based on different scales of how you write the proposal. And like I said, number 4, easy, get a team together. These days, doing things by yourself is great, but most of what we talk about and most of what the proposals I see are collaborations in different ways, and not just co-PIs, but actually collaborations within the body of the proposal as well, and certainly resources. So you guys can read through this in more detail and get more information, hopefully when we send this PowerPoint. So next slide, please. So I think I can go through the next ones quickly. So proposals are reviewed again for everything that is in there. So the mentoring plan, the data management plan, all of them need to have intellectual merit. All of them, especially the postdoc mentoring plan, has to be very specific guidelines as what NSF wants to see. They want to make sure that this is not just something that you threw in there. You definitely want to make sure that it has a cogent plan that will benefit the postdoc. And so everything in this, your biosketch, your institution, everything's part of the mix. So it's not something where you can just say, you know, we can do this, or that there is some magical formula that is easy to use. A lot of universities do look at proposals that are complex sometimes as starting off with boilerplates and templates. I would encourage you to use those as only as starting points and tailor them to specifically to the RFP that NSF wants. Tailor it to your own institution and tailor it to what you feel would be the best in terms of enhancing your intellectual merit and broader impacts. Nothing should be wasted in a proposal, and the reviewers will read through everything. They really do. They spend 3 to 5 hours on each proposal. And a lot of it is not just reading the words, it's going through everything. So again, make sure its relevance is in the broader impacts beyond just research, and look at it from this perspective of being able to do, to advance knowledge, meaning that there'll be new questions to ask once your project it goes to completion. Next slide, please. So again, make it easy for the reviewer. So what I do, my best tip, I guess, for you all is I go to the NSF RFP, which is brand new now for HSI. And I read through, I make sure that I give my staff people who deal with proposals, the VPR's office or the Associate Dean for Research office. I make sure they know what that is, and there's some things that we have to abide by. But I go almost all the way down till it gets to the point of evaluation criteria. And you could start seeing what each section, NSF does a beautiful job of telling you what are the questions that they're looking to answer as an institution, through their reviewers, through the program officer, and through the review at the end of what is this program doing. They put the questions in there. So if you structure your proposal so that the reviewer and the program officer can clearly understand every point that you tried to make. So I try to structure it so that I know, for example, the section that has to do with evaluation, to make sure it's evaluation plan, research plan. And if I have special sections, I put the special sections, I label them. I make it easy to see, especially things like the evaluation, which again, I'll come back to as being a very important point. They want a logic model. So we build some kind of a logic model that's visual, make it easy, and talk about it. When it comes to areas that are specific to the criteria of that particular program, I even put bullets and subtitles, because I know if it's specific to that program, the reviewers are going to look in your proposal. And if they spend too much time trying to find it, they may not understand what you're trying to address. And even though it may all be there, it has to be organized. So I would urge you to make sure, if you put yourself in the proposal reviewer's perspective, you want everything organized so that you can focus on what you need to focus on, so you can argue with the panel that this is a good proposal, this is a fundable proposal, and that the summary of the proposal review can be easily written again by the team of people reviewing the proposal. Next slide, please. Being helpful. So we'll just go to the next slide. I think I repeated myself. So then writing is what I was taught in English class early on. Writing is about rewriting. Rewriting is about rewriting. Rewriting is about rewriting. Definitely. And so rather than just sit there constantly fixing the text over and over again, my tip for you would be to step back after you've written a few pages, or even almost there, and say, is what I wrote, is that really what I want to do? Because is this really important the way it looks now? And even give it to someone else to read, or verbalize it. Read it out loud. See if it really is compelling to you. Also, make sure that you include what other people have done. Again, NSF funded projects, people are pretty good about providing you information about their project. And even people like myself, I'm not the only person that gives narratives of prior grants. We do that routinely amongst HRD awardees. I'd say it's a very collaborative environment when you're an NSF HRD awardee. And then you also want to go to the literature, 10 webinars now. Everybody's on a webinar. So you can get lots of information now, which is, I guess, the good news about the global pandemic is that it's a level playing field now. Now I can jump in on a webinar. Most times it's free, where in the past I would have to go to a conference or to get that same information, and too busy to do that, so and so. And also make sure that if you have the capability of having someone critique you in an early stage of your writing, take that advantage, take that opportunity, and just tell people, look, I want you to read this for this, this, and this. Be specific to them. And then they can provide you direct feedback, and then you can make sense of that feedback and incorporate it. And certainly you want to make sure that you understand how you're going to advance knowledge. So that results dissemination is really important. And be, again, very specific, because that's one of the purposes of funding science, right? In the public sector is to make sure that there's a societal benefit at multiple levels. Certainly understanding and learning from awardees is really important. Next slide, please. So like I said, Google NSF Awards, or you can just go to the NSF website. They're really helpful areas, and you can find it by geographic region, by congressional district, by topic. Spend a lot of time there, and then you can understand a little bit more what the mosaic is of granted projects. Next slide, please. So I would say, I won't read through all of this stuff. You do have to always be careful, and I've made this mistake myself several times, is that each program, even within HSI, has some specific things that they want. Make sure you got all the pieces in there, that they're properly labeled. I always forget to do some of the pieces like the data management plan. I have to make sure that that's there correctly. And then there's some other statistics that they might ask. And there may be some other areas that you can anticipate, people asking. Certainly in your biosketch, you want to make sure it's correct, that it has all the sections, because that's an area that NSF keeps modifying. So every year they have slightly different requests for the kinds of things that they're looking for. I think it's been stable the last 2 years, but they've been modifying that every year. And I expect that there's going to be another bit of modification in those things that NSF asks for as we move forward. Next slide, please. So evaluation. Can't say that enough. There are some really great people out there who, if you ask advice of your colleagues and myself and others, we can point you to some really good people to talk to see if you can have them as an external evaluator, and certainly learn who are the type of people in your institution that are available to be evaluators. Really key group of people here. You want to understand what data you're going to get, how it's going to be analyzed, and you need to be able to distinguish between evaluation and the critical areas of the research component. So in my case, I try to separate them completely, so that if I'm working on the project and a colleague is doing the educational research, I work with the evaluator and my colleague works with the evaluator, and we keep them kind of separate, our tasks, so that it's clear that these two areas are being done in a way that we evaluate the overall project, but it's not, the research project is not evaluation project. Next slide, please. Oh, all right, so we're at the end. I was a little bit concerned I was taking a little too long. But again, those of you who have any questions at all, if you want another copy of this, if you can't get a copy of this PowerPoint, if you want me to share some narratives of successful proposals that I've been involved in, there's my cell phone and my email. So I'm always eager to help people to do better proposals. Why? Because that's how we grow the National Science Foundation in terms of its impact as well, and as well as our body of knowledge.